What is going on, everybody? It's the Front, and we're here for Unscripted episode number 31 for your August 9th, 2020. We are on our way to SummerSlam, or as some people are calling it, Summer Scam, the lamest party of the summer. This was a really interesting week. We started off on Monday. XFL was supposed to have its bankruptcy hearing, where they're going to have an auction to see who was going to win that slot, who was going to win the ability to buy the league. Then we move on to Marty Janetty confessing apparently to making somebody disappear, if you know what I mean. Raw being terrible. AEW and NXT having the best, two of the best shows of the year. And then we get to SmackDown and the debut of the midgets known as Retribution. It's pretty bad for a faction when Shane Helms comes on Twitter and mocks them by saying they all look like they're 5'11". And then Lance Storm puts in, it's like they actually look like they're 5'6", and they look like kids. My goodness, this was a bad debut. But let's start with Marty Janetty. This is very disturbing. Marty Janetty came on Facebook earlier this week, put out this big, huge, scripture of talking about when he was 13, he made somebody disappear. Now, police in Columbus, Georgia, are now reportedly investigating former WWE star Marty Janetty over the bizarre Facebook post he made earlier this week. As then, Janetty posted about how he allegedly murdered a gay man who tried to sexually assault him behind a Victory Lane's bowling alley where they both worked when Janetty was 13. He said he had been buying marijuana from the man. He also indicated that he got rid of the body by dumping it in the Chattahoochee River. The post was deleted soon after it was posted, but now the police department told TMZ that they are going to look into the claim. They said, and I quote, "We are going to look into this," a spokesperson for the CPD Homicide and Cold Case Division said. The first step will be seeing if anyone was missing, if there was any missing person or unidentified remains cases that match the limited information out of that post. The Janetty investigation won't receive priority and won't be any kind of all-hands-on-deck situation, as the spokesperson noted that they have several current active homicide investigations underway, and it'll have to remain a priority. Janetty noted in his original post that his brother Gino had just returned from the Vietnam War when the incident happened. The former tag team and Intercontinental Champion was born February 1962, so it would have been 1973. And the Vietnam War officially ended in 1975, but troops had been returning at various times before the end of the war ended. For what it's worth, the Chattanooga River does run through the Columbus area. There are also records of Victory Lane's Family Bowling Center in Columbus. At some point, and the facility was located on Fort Benning Road, which is right next to the Chattahoochee. So, I don't know what's going on. I'm pretty sure this is something this is just weird, and I don't know if Marty Janetty was on drugs or something, high when he's saying this, but this is something that you wouldn't just go out on Facebook with a sound mind and body and be like, you know what, I'm going to confess to something from when I was 13. I mean, he's old as hell now, but my goodness, this dude has got, maybe he just got done having drinks, who knows? As they know, loose lips sink ships, so maybe something just clicked in his head when he was drinking. Maybe he was depressed. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. It's just weird to have Marty Janetty go out there and say these things, and as far as we know, they could be real, they could be false. 1973 to 75 is so long ago, and honestly, unless there is a body, like a shred of anything, like a piece of a piece of bone somewhere, you're probably, and especially since he said he threw him into a river, it's gonna be kind of hard for anything to come out of this, honestly. Like, I'm 30 right now, and I could say 17 years ago, I did this to somebody and threw him in a river. It would be weird, it would be odd, it would be hard to figure out because it was 17 years ago. And that's just like, if you throw a body in the river, it's almost never going to be found, especially 17 years later. But it's just so weird and so odd. Like, why now? Is it because he's so old that, like, he figures that if he said something now, he'd be able to get it off his chest, and honestly, nothing's gonna probably come of it? It's just really weird. Now, on to some positive news. It looks like the XFL has landed an unexpected buyer just hours before it was to be auctioned off. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, his longtime business partner, Danny Garcia, apparently his ex-fiancée or ex-wife, and Cardinals and Cardinals Redbird Capital have reportedly purchased the XFL and split the price tag of $15 million evenly to Sportico.com, according to Sportico.com. The company name that officially purchased in the league is listed as Alpha Aquico LLC, according to PW Insider. Since the group was the only qualified bidder that provided an offer, the auction had been canceled. As noted, the league shut down and filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy back in April due to negative impacts of COVID-19. At the time, all major employees were let go. The new transaction is required for the approval through a bankruptcy court, and the hearing is Friday, August 7th. If all conditions are properly met, it's expected to close around the date of August 21st. It will be interesting to see what the group has prepared for the future of the XFL. Redbird has made multiple investments in sports-related products over the years, and they have connections with the people in the National Football League. Now, of all people, one, it's great to see that the XFL is going nowhere. Great. There has been so many talent out there. Professional football needs a minor league, because there are so many players out there who are going to get cut year in and year out and need somewhere to go because they still want to play the game. And minor league players does not mean, even if you play in the XFL, it does not mean that you're going to make it to the NFL and have a long NFL career. You might spend 4 or 5 years playing in the XFL, and then you go, you know what? I played, I got as much time as I wanted to, I'm going to retire. That's something that you don't have in football. Basketball has the NBA G League. Baseball has the minor leagues minus this year because of COVID-19. But still, hockey has multiple hockey leagues. And the only one really that doesn't in the Big Four is football. And football needs one. So having them able to get the XFL up and running is great. Absolutely great for them. And since it is Sunday, it was approved by a judge that they will be able to buy the XFL. And when it all becomes official, it's all going to be interesting to see what happens with the XFL coming up if there's going to be a season in 2021. But I will do everything I can to cover the XFL in 2021 if it is possible. Now, this one is an interesting one. Back a couple weeks ago, we got the outbreak of COVID-19 in WWE, and a lot of talent disappeared for a while. Otis and Manny and Sonya, to name 3. Kevin Owens disappeared for a minute. All these other talent disappeared, and one talent that has not returned since everyone else is making a return now is Austin Theory. And we all thought, and I'm pretty sure anyone else is thinking, where is Austin Theory? Why is Austin Theory not on Monday Night Raw? Well, it turns out apparently Austin Theory is suspended by WWE. Why? I have no idea. Austin Theory, who was last seen on Monday Night Raw as one of Seth Rollins' disciples, has reportedly been suspended by WWE, according to Dave Meltzer. With Austin Theory off television for nearly 2 months, there has been speculation that the 23-year-old star had tested positive for COVID-19. However, Meltzer tweeted Monday night that WWE has suspended Theory and did not make an announcement. While replying to a fan asking Theory's whereabouts, Meltzer wrote, "Unannounced suspension of sorts." Meltzer did not provide any details on the reason for the suspension. Earlier this year, several reports noted that Theory was in line for a big push on the main roster after debuting on Raw as a member of Zelina Vega's stable. Theory was outed from that stable and then joined Seth Rollins' stable and became one of the Monday Night Messiah's disciples. So, what could he be suspended for? Like, it's like, if it's a 2-month thing, which of course would be 60 days, it would have been like, it would have had to have been, to me, either a drug policy violation or behavioral issues. That's the only thing I can think of. What else could they have suspended for? But why wouldn't they make the announcement that Austin Theory is suspended? I mean, they could always make the excuse that, hey, he's not here because of medical reasons. He's COVID-19 or whatever. But it's like, it's really weird that WWE would not mention on TV why Austin, like, not on TV, but like on the internet, why Austin Theory is not there. Because usually when we have a main roster star, if it was NXT, I could see them just being like, they have him gone because he needs to get more attention. But he's been on the main roster since WrestleMania, since right before WrestleMania. So why they haven't this? It's not like, if he is actually suspended for some reason, I'm surprised they didn't want to actually give us a reason why. It just makes no sense to me. That's just, I give you an update whenever I can about Austin Theory. But moving on here, SmackDown was supposed to tape two shows on Tuesday. SmackDown taped one show on Tuesday. Why? Because Vince McMahon is in that time of the year where he just can't make up his mind. Monday Night Raw, they taped 2 episodes, and it was a bloody mess. Vince McMahon apparently was in a violent mood. Vince McMahon was just he kept changing his mind, ripping up the script. They were taping, including that Raw Underground stuff, which was total garbage, by the way. And we'll talk about that with Seth Rollins here in a bit, but the tapings were a mess. So when they get to Tuesday, they're supposed to tape 2 episodes of SmackDown. That taping becomes a total mess. There was a scheduled changes made on Tuesday SmackDown taping from the Performance Center in Orlando, Florida. The changes were reportedly issued by a guarding organization. WWE taped 1 episode of SmackDown instead of 2, and that 1 episode was aired this past Friday. To make up for the changes, scheduled Monday, August 17th taping for Raw has been moved up to Thursday, August 13th. WWE will now tape that Friday, August 14th SmackDown show and the August 17th Raw show on August 13th. The August 13th taping will take place one day after the NXT's taping on August 12th as a result, and many, many other things. And it's like, why is Vince McMahon in this state? Why is Vince McMahon in this violent state? Why is he pissed off so much and changing his mind? Because they're getting desperate. Vince McMahon is desperate to get ratings up. Fox and USA are losing patience. They are losing patience with Vince McMahon. They need to have something work. Now, granted, they have this Raw Underground thing that went down. Could it work? Probably not. And Raw Underground was part of... Here's the thing. Monday Night Raw was up a little bit on ratings. Not by much, but up a little bit. Less than 100,000 extra fans tuned in. But WWE is trying everything. They need something to stick so badly that fans are going to tune in every single week to make sure that they get fans to come back. And the fact that you get ratings up by a little bit, WWE's going to think that, hey, we're doing something right. It's just going to take time. And honestly, that's just not how that's going to work. WWE needs to realize this, but WWE is going to continue to do stupid shit like this for as long as they can. Why? Because it's the only thing they can really do. Nothing has worked for them. Nothing. And they'll continue. I mean, you have this Retribution stable, which is done in so poor taste. WWE go out there and give you a mock-up of Antifa. What you don't know what Antifa is, it's a radical left-wing group who are going out, rioting, pillaging, setting fires, attacking people, causing people strife, people pain. It's just a bad time in the world today. And WWE thinks that, hey, we can bank off this. But it won't. But it's not political. It's not political whatsoever. WWE doesn't say it's political, but it's like, come on, we're not this stupid, Vince. We know it. You know it. Everyone else knows it. That this is all political. Here's the problem with this Retribution stable. I'm 6'1", and I'm not that strong of a guy, not that bulky of a guy. And if it wasn't for the weapons, honestly, I could beat the three or four guys' ass. They look like fucking midgets from 205 Live. They look like rejects. And that ran up to the camera sounded one of the Singh brothers. If Sunil and Samir Singh go out there and are members of this radical group that they're trying to do, this chaos-bringing group, that's just going to be a major failure. Vanessa Bourne's definitely one of them. If you watch the show and you watch when they were beating up, looked like a couple of NXT star talent in the hard camp side. When the one talent, when the obvious woman was strutting around, you could see her hair pop out, and it was definitely Vanessa Bourne's hair. She was like walking around like Vanessa Bourne would do. Yeah, that just screams radicalness right there. The fact that they're going to try and use Vanessa Bourne, trying to get Vanessa Bourne over in a group like this. It just doesn't work. It's a group that's going to fail. Vince McMahon is going to... And here's on top of this. They had Retribution go out there, spray paint all of the plexiglass, cut open the ring, with a very bad chainsaw, by the way, a very fake chainsaw, and all that. And then you flip over to WWE Network if you're somebody who watched 205 Live, and none of it was there. It's like none of it happened. Why would you do that? I mean, yes, you take time to replace the ring ropes, but all the other damage for Retribution should have been there. It should have shown that, hey, this is the damage that happens to a group. Having, obviously, 205 Live was taped before the Retribution stuff, which, again, was utter nonsense. But if you're gonna, or it was after that and they changed everything out, which I highly doubt. But if you're going to have this group go out there and make this mess and everything, your next show, if there's a show going on that same night, it should have the damage already done. You should see all the damage, all like Retribution, spray paint everywhere. But nope, they didn't. They showed an episode of 205 Live as if nothing was there. This company wants you to believe this is going to be any better than the Nexus, any better than the Invasion, any better than Nation of Domination, any better than anything else. This is a failure. If you like it, that's on you. But my goodness, that is just, it was just so bad. So bad. Now, let me see what else we got here. So, WWE wants to get back to live taping immediately, as fast as they can. So WWE is reportedly planning to resume live shows later this month, as reported today this week by WrestleVotes. The new plan is to restart live programming beginning at the WWE SummerSlam Go Home Show edition of SmackDown on August 21st. That's in 2 weeks. WWE would then continue through the weekend with live events SummerSlam and Live Raw on Monday night. There's no word yet if fans will be at live shows, as that was described as is still to be determined. The location for the live SmackDown, Raw, and SummerSlam is also up in the air, but it's noted that there will be one location for all three events. It's also been reported WWE is looking to hold SummerSlam in the northeastern somewhere like Atlantic City in New Jersey or the Florida coast. Regarding NXT TakeOver 30, the event is scheduled for SummerSlam weekend on Saturday, August 22nd. The new report notes that it will still take place at NXT's arena at the campus of Full Sail University in Winter Park, Florida, right next to Orlando. There's no word yet if TakeOver will be aired live or be on a slight tape delay, as usual. WWE has taped weekly shows without fans since COVID-19 pandemic hit in March. They did try to bring some fans in. They tried to bring friends and family of talent in, but what happened there? The same day that they actually started doing that was the same day that a female performance center talent came down with COVID-19, and then they had to start doing testing because there were COVID-19 spikes. So WWE's been testing ever since, and now we just have to wait to see what they do. SummerSlam has been rumored to be on a boat, Atlantic City, on the beach. We are 2 Sundays away. 2 Sundays away from SummerSlam. And they have yet to nail down where it's going to be. They have yet to announce where it's going to be. I understand Vince McMahon wants to get it out of the dead, dry performance center, and rightfully so. I wouldn't mind seeing SummerSlam on the beach. Give it some kind of look, some kind of different feel. And putting it on a beach would allow fans to come be there and watch the show at whatever distance you want to do, whatever gathering you want to do. And especially if you get a private beach. I mean, hell, doesn't Hulk Hogan have a private beach? Call up Terry and be like, hey, Terry, can we use your private beach? He'd probably be like, yeah, brother. As long as you promote his shit. He could be the host of SummerSlam at his beach. Hulk Hogan presents SummerSlam from his beach with a limited number of fans. It's out in the open. It looks different. It would probably bring a little bit of coolness to SummerSlam. But that's up to WWE what they want to do with that. So SummerSlam is coming up soon. I know WWE wants so badly to give us what they want. So we got to move on here. This next one is just I don't know what this guy keeps doing. Hugo Savinovich needs to stop being talked to or get off the weed, because this makes no sense to me. Why he would even say, even though I could see this particular talent doing this in a different lifetime. Former WWE ring announcer Hugo Savinovich said that WWE NXT superstar Karrion Kross was once a hitman for hire. It should be noted that Savinovich is known for making wild claims on social media. At times, he noted in recent Facebook videos that Kross was a real-life mercenary that was contracted to do dirty jobs for mafia groups when he was younger. Savinovich said Kross the mafia groups like Kross for a real-life hitman due to his scary look. He's a warrior. He's an athlete that once was a hired murderer. This is not a making this, making that. No, this is the real thing. Now he's a passion at wrestling. I love my friend. He had a great friendship. God bless him and his love for Scarlett, noted Hugo, translated from Spanish. It will be interesting to see if Cross addresses these claims, which apparently I have not seen anything. Cross, Savinovich, who also worked with Cross in AAA, noted that he helped Cross with his creative ideas for his character in NXT. Dude, I can, like, honestly, if you look at Karrion Cross, the dude does look like Agent 47 turned up a notch. The dude is scary. It builds into his character. Do I actually expect him to be a former hitman for hire? No. This just seems a little bit too much for him. Hugo, of course, was the one who mentioned about WWE. Oh wait, no, that was somebody else. He's mentioned a bunch of things. He was the one who talked about, I believe it was the plane ride for hell 2.0 from November of last year being legit. He has made wild claims in the past. This one just seems to be the wildest one yet. Hugo Savinovich is just, Let's move over to AEW. Brandy Rhodes, the chief brand officer of AEW, doing her job as best she can, has apparently deleted her Twitter account. No official comment on why Brandy has left Twitter. Several on Twitter are implying that she deleted her account because of the criticism she received due to the AEW heels in the AEW's women's division. Earlier this week, AEW announced the launch of AEW's Heels, which is being led by Brandy. Heels is a membership platform for female wrestling fans. The first AEW Heels event was for this past Friday. So the tweet on the current situation. Brandy Rhodes seems to have deactivated her Twitter account. Gary Cassidy. Brandy Rhodes got the hate for AEW Heels, which is $49 a month to talk to AEW talent and do some Q&A sessions and party with them. Sasha actually didn't get hate for making people charge them like $400 for a 30-second cameo. Exactly. It is disappointing, but people bully Brandy into the point where she felt it was best to leave Twitter. People have been toxic and hateful to her on social media for years, unfortunately. Brandy talks about her Heels website and how it's only for women, and then a day later deactivates her Twitter. Another one. I think the reason for the backlash is the people had to pay $50 a year to do it. It's very steep for people who may not have jobs right now. $50 a year is actually not that bad. Brandy, while her comments weren't understandable, decided as an AEW executive decided to engage with wrestling Twitter. Big mistake, absolutely. There are so many toxic fans on Twitter. You, as the chief brand officer, needs to push it all to the side. One thing that people have been criticizing Brandy Rhodes for, and I don't understand why, is that people still think that Brandy Rhodes is in charge of the women's division. She is not. Brandy Rhodes is the chief brand officer. The person behind the women's division as a whole is Kenny Omega. It has always been Kenny Omega. Kenny Omega is Kenny Omega's baby, his brainchild. Yes, Tony Khan is the be-all end-all. He makes the final decisions. But putting matches together and building up the brand for the women is Kenny Omega. It was Kenny Omega who pushed and wanted Riho to be the women's champion the first time, which was fucking stupid. And again, as we all know, was a very bad idea. But people, and then I had some fucking clown on Twitter argue with me back and forth that no, Brandy was in charge, Kenny took over, now it's Brandy again, and then he tried to quote some person who is supposed to be the IWC community leader. Give me a fucking break. No, this person is not a reputable source for wrestling news. I'm not going to give him his name out because he doesn't deserve it. But this clown was like sitting there, he's like, oh, this guy, you like teach this guy because, and it's like, dude, why are you listening? No wonder you're a fucking moron because you sit there and listen to somebody who has no knowledge of anything, is not somebody you go to for news, and that's on you. But yeah, if anybody wants to give hate, because there are people complaining because the women's tag team tournament they're doing, this Deadly Draw, is on YouTube on Mondays at 7 o'clock. And AEW's women's division has had one match on AEW television here and there. Hell, until Tony Khan came out and said something, there was this AEW this AEW fan person who was badgering him. What is the women's representation? Why isn't there a women's match on AEW this week? Maybe you should wait till the fucking show goes on. You don't have to be not every match needs to be announced for the upcoming week's show. They can announce Orange Cassidy versus Chris Jericho this week, and the Luchasaurus versus the Jurassic Express versus the Tag Team Champions, which is now a title match. And that's all they need. They do give you most things, but the fact that this person continued to badger and bug Tony Khan until he's like, well, by the way, Big Swole is going to take on a person that Britt Baker chooses for her this week. Guess what? That match lasted 2 minutes. Anybody bitching and complaining that the women's tag team tournament is on YouTube for free is stupid. It's women's wrestling getting their own show. It's going to last about 4 or 5 weeks. 3 weeks. So it's going to last about 4 weeks probably, unless they do the semifinals and finals all in one show. But it's seriously, people, are you that fucking dumb? The women of AEW are getting a platform all their own. WWE sure hell doesn't do that. They did the Mae Young Classic, and that was it. But main roster talent don't get that luxury. They got one women's pay-per-view 2 years ago, and you know how badly promoted that was? And on top of that, a lot of WWE, I keep saying WWE. AEW's women talent are either stuck overseas or are injured. Chris Statlander, injured. Britt Baker, injured. Statlander just got her surgery for her messed up knee this past week. But she is the galaxy's greatest alien. We don't need to see her on television until she's ready to wrestle. Britt Baker, on the other hand, isn't the greatest wrestler, but what's keeping her and getting her over is her gimmick, is her character. So anybody sitting there bitching or moaning and yelling at or getting pissed off at Brandy Rhodes need to back the fuck off, because it's not Brandy. Brandy has nothing to do with how the women's division goes. Now, the $50 a month for a membership to talk with women's wrestling fans, which, by the way, if AEW is trying to do this heels thing where it's going to be women's wrestling fans who love women's wrestling, I have some news for you. Most women's wrestling fans that are women don't like the women's wrestling. They like the men. It's that simple. If you a lot of it is that's on her pretty much. If Brandy Rhodes honestly thinks that, oh well, we're gonna do this women's thing, we're gonna do this wrestling group called AEW Heels, and it's gonna be for women's wrestling fans who love women's wrestling, I got some bad news for you. Nobody cares that women don't watch wrestling as maybe little girls do. But grown, teenage women and teenage girls or men, actually grown women, don't watch professional wrestling to watch women's wrestling. It's just that simple. They like the men. They like to look and, see how good looking these guys are and fawn over an MJF or a Jungle Boy or even Luchasaurus or so on and so forth. Kenny Omega, Hangman Page, all that. Women's wrestling, the whole heels thing was a failed concept from the start. You have to pay $50 a year for talking, some Q&A sessions, some virtual parties right now. It's not a bad price because it's only not even $5 a month or something, but still, not the best move. But again, people going after Brandy for all of this, the women's division's in shambles, because it's no. And everyone's oh, well, Brandy's booking herself. No, she's not. Granted, she has more time because, again, Chris Statlander's injured. Britt Baker's only on TV because she can be that despicable heel without having to wrestle a match. So anybody going after Brandi Rhodes needs to back the fuck off. You want to go after somebody for the way the women are being booked. You go after Tony Khan. You go after Kenny Omega. But again, you have a full, almost... How long was that show this week? How long was that show? Hold on here. If I can find it here, I have my YouTube up for a minute. The women's tournament was 37 minutes and 42 seconds. That's still that's a half an hour, a little over half an hour. Now, if they wanted to, they could have taped the entire tournament in one episode and gave you the whole tournament in one go on YouTube. Would have been probably about 2.5 hours, but they didn't do that. They gave you 2 this week with Ariana Andrews, which I'm glad she did not sign with AEW, versus Tay Conte and Anna Jay. And Tay Conte looked fantastic. I'm telling you right now, Tay Conte looked better in this one match against Nyla Rose and Ariana or Cameron than she did in any match she had on NXT television. Plain and simple. She looked so good in that match that I wonder if AEW is going to give her a second look. Now, of course... And then people are getting all pissed that, like, AEW is not giving enough women opportunity. And it's like, hello, they signed Abaddon. They signed Anna Jay in the last 4 or 5 months. AEW is doing this women's tournament, and I wish it was just... Like, I wish it was more than 16 women. I wish it was 32 women, 16 teams. So you could have more women from... outside of AEW getting a shot so we can see more of them. But it'll be interesting to see who the other 4 teams are going into this tournament. So we'll see who AEW is bringing in. But speaking of tag teams, AEW stars FTR, Dax Harwood, and Cash Wheeler, and Impact Wrestling stars The North, Ethan Page, and Josh Alexander want to face off in a big interpromotional tag team match. And Impact Wrestling's co-executive vice president Scott D'Amore wants to make the match happen. Harwood took to Twitter this week and commented on a clip of he and 5 of the Dark Order from Wednesday's 12-man tag match on AEW. The match saw the Dark Order's 5'9", Brody Lee, Colt Cabana, Stu Grayson, Evil Uno defeat FTR, the Young Bucks, and tag team champions Kenny Omega and Hangman Page. Harwood noted that the sequence is what makes he and Wheeler great tag team questions. So, yeah, Impact Wrestling wants to make the match happen, and I have not seen anything about AEW wanting to make the match happen. So, I'd say, let's make the match happen. Why not? Why not? I mean, it would give them another leg up. I know they're supposed to be competing against each other, but I mean, come on. How many times have we had interpromotional before? I mean, New Japan works with Ring of Honor. AEW has a couple of the stars working in New Japan right now. I mean, at New Japan Pro Wrestling just started a New Japan Pro Wrestling, a New Japan Cup USA, where they have, I think it's 8 wrestlers in a tournament. I think they're going to have a couple episodes. I have not seen it yet. But they're going to have 8 wrestlers, and the winner of this, and it's everyone who's here in the United States. I don't know where they did the taping, but it's going to be 8 guys, and the winner gets a match against Jon Moxley in the near future. I don't know how they're going to do that with the way the pandemic is, and I don't know if how it's going to get done. But it'd be interesting to see what happens with that. It'd be great to see Jon Moxley defending the title, but we don't know. We have no idea. In WWE, and they. I'm sorry, my nose is just bothering me. But it'd be fine. It'd be fine to have in a promotional play. There's nothing wrong with that. I think the I think the days of just having nothing going on needs to end. I think it needs to come down to giving us what we want to see, and that is the best of the best going up against each other no matter what promotion they're in. A lot of it has to do with ego. A lot of it has to do with like, oh well, our top champion, our top champion can't lose because of X, Y, and Z. It's like don't want him in a match. Interpromotional matches should be, they should be able to happen. The North are no longer the tag team champions. FTR are not the tag team champions yet. You could have these two go out there and give you a hell of a match. The only way this is probably going to happen is if like GCW brings both tag teams in. Then it can happen. Or if any other indie promotions are happening right now, they bring FTR and the North in and have that match. Now, of course, neither AEW or Impact Wrestling would want that to happen because they want to see. They wouldn't want to see have this big match right here go without having some kind of promotion and some kind of payoff for Impact and AEW. If they go to GCW or somewhere else, that's all. It wouldn't work for them. It would not work. So, AEW and Impact Wrestling, get it done. We would, us as wrestling fans, would actually want to see that. Sticking with AEW, Sammy Guevara. As we know, Sammy Guevara made his return 3 weeks ago, had his return match last week, and then this past Wednesday had a brawl with Matt Hardy. Well, after Matt Hardy was put on a table that he set up himself, so he gets him on the table, he gets this chair, and just tosses it on him. Well, the chair that Sammy Guevara uses was the wrong chair. Apparently, AEW had this light chair, there's supposed to be this chair that was there that he was going to throw at Matt Hardy that would have been light as can be and pretty much did no damage. As you know, Matt Hardy got busted wide open, was bleeding profusely, the blood was all over the table. Now, Sammy Guevara, yes, got a talking to, yes, got heat on him, which, honestly, it took 13 stitches to close the wound after being busted up by Sammy Guevara. While the steel spot was planned, Guevara busted open Hardy because he actually used the wrong chair. Guevara has reportedly grabbed the wrong chair sitting at ringside, according to Brian Alvarez of Wrestling is Over Live. There was apparently 2 chairs at ringside, and one was the traditional folding chair. The idea that Guevara would grab that chair and throw it at Hardy, but Hardy would get his arms up to take the impact. The spot was supposed to be a chair shot, but with no blood. However, Guevara reportedly got caught up in the heat of the moment and was very excited. He was unable to find the folding chair, so he picked up the other, heavier chair. Alvarez noted that Guevara panicked and threw the other chair at Hardy, busting him open on the hard way. This is half on Sammy and half on AEW. Why would you have 2 different chairs? Why would you have one that he could use to do the spot right, and then one that he could do to do the spot wrong? Sammy did what anybody would do. You would grab the closest chair that you could and toss it because that's what it should be. You shouldn't just sit there and have Sammy Guevara sitting around looking for this chair. Here's a good idea. Get like 3 or 4 of these chairs that you know won't do the damage that this chair did, and put them there so Sammy Guevara can grab one without having to look around and be like, oh shit, where's this chair that I'm supposed to use? Sammy Guevara, yes, should have thought better, but he got up in the heat of the moment, as they said, and they shouldn't have been put in that situation where it's like, hey, option A or option B. He took B and threw the chair and ended up busting Matt Hardy open. But again, why would you even give him that option? It should be option A. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. He grabs a chair and throws it, and the spot goes off without a hitch. Should Sammy get the full blame? No. No, but apparently he has backstage heat. It was also noted that Guevara received a very stern talking to when he returned backstage. But again, Whoever set the spot up, whoever set the chairs up, should have a stern talking to too, because it's not all Sammy's fault. You're gonna sit there and you're gonna put this guy out there with 2 different type of chairs and expect him to find the one that he's supposed to use every single the first time is ridiculous. And it didn't help the fact that this was the live episode, right? No. This show was taped. You could have had this spot redone, or had this spot set up to where Sammy does the thing and then throws it after finding the right chair, and they could have cut it down. So I wouldn't say it's still all on Sammy. Sammy was just going by his instinct to throw the chair. But again, why would you put him in a position where he could be fucked over and end up hurting Matt Hardy? And I've seen the wound, and my goodness, that looked awful. Don't put your talent in that position where it's like one bad move can fuck another person up at worse than they should be. Again, AEW needs to take some blame for this. Whoever put the spot together, whoever said, you're going to go over here, you're going to grab this chair, not this other one, you're going to grab this chair here and throw it at Matt. You got to look at them and say, listen, if you would have did this right, get at least 2-3 of those chairs and put them out there so Sammy doesn't have to sit there and grab the wrong chair or look like a dumbass looking around to throw the right chair. Sticking with the AEW news, this is some very positive stuff. It was announced earlier, I believe it was Thursdays when they announced these announcements, that next week on Dark, Penelope Ford will be taking on one Rachel Ellering. Rachel Ellering is, of course, the daughter of WWE Hall of Famer Paul Ellering, who started working NXT matches as enhancement talent back in 2016. She then worked the Mae Young Classic in 2016 and 2017 before being signed to a WWE deal in January 2019. Unfortunately, she suffered a torn ACL in July of 2019 and was on the shelf for a year. She was released in WWE back in back in April due to COVID-19. She did make an announcement in May that she was released. Ellering, who has used the name Rachel Evers in WWE because they didn't want her to have her father's last name, joins Tino Sabatelli, Tanaya Conti, and MJ Jenkins as recently NXT's released talent to be on AEW as of late. AEW Dark airs every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. via the AEW YouTube channel, and this is the matches this coming Tuesday. We start with Jurassic Express versus Aaron Solo and Corey Hollis and Pineapple Pete. Billy and Austin Gunn versus Sean Dean and M. Badu. I have no idea who that is. Private Party versus Brian Pillman Jr. and Griff Garrison, a.k.a. Jungle Man. The Natural Nightmares making their return after QT Marshall coming back from his COVID-19 dealings versus the returning Hybrid 2. I think AEW's, outside of the talent in the UK, I think AEW's got everyone else back now. SCU versus The Butcher and the Blade. Sean Spears versus Alex Chamberlain. Ray Phoenix versus Lee Johnson. Kip Sabian versus Michael Stevens. And Penelope Ford versus Rachel Ellering. So, WWE signed Rachel Ellering for one reason and one reason only. Because they didn't want her to go anywhere else. She got the same deal as Deonna Purrazzo. WWE signed her to a contract but had no desire to use her. And that's all there is to it. They had no desire to use her, so they said, you know what, we're just going to sign you up, because if we sign you, you're not going to be anywhere else. And that's exactly what it was. She's going to be nowhere else. She's going to be here. We're going to be able to suppress her, keep her down, not allow her to wrestle anywhere else. Of course, yes, she got injured, so that didn't help anything either. And here she is, little over 1 year later, back to show you what she can do. Pretty much, this, WWE, can you think of this one time? WWE had under their umbrella for a very brief time back in 2016, Tessa Blanchard, Rachel Ellering, and Charlotte Flair. Wrestling royalty right there. They did not sign Rachel Ellering at the time. They did not sign Tessa Blanchard. Tessa Blanchard went on to Impact Wrestling for a couple years. Rachel Ellering they eventually did sign, but never used. Charlotte Flair, of course, is Charlotte Flair. But it's just like, could you imagine Rachel Ellering, Charlotte Flair, and Tessa Blanchard all in WWE? But what happened? WWE did what WWE does. And they let Rachel Ellering rot. She ended up tearing her ACL. I believe it was in some training session that she was doing at the Performance Center. She missed an entire year. I'm pretty sure she is happy that she is no longer in WWE because they weren't going to do anything with her anyway. Now, we're still on this AEW bandwagon because AEW loses top supporter Kevin Riley at Warner Media after major restructure. All Elite Wrestling has lost a major supporter at Warner Media. Kevin Riley is gone from Warner Media due to a major restructure under newly installed CEO Jason Killer. According to the Hollywood Reporter, Riley was instrumental in AEW getting the TNT deal. He worked as content chief at Warner Media and as the president of TNT, TBS, and True TV. The Hollywood Reporter noted that the series of moves will prioritize HBO Max and streamline Warner Media's content operations. There will be a newly created studio and networks groups which will combine content studios and programming across Warner Brothers, TNT, TBS, True TV, HBO, and HBO Max. They will oversee Warner Media TV series, film development, production, and programming. You can see all the full report over where Warner Media is at. See, he was a major proponent for AEW getting their TV deal. This is the thing that people don't seem to realize. WCW was going to have... Now, here's the thing. When WCW lost their TV deal, it wasn't because... It was mostly because they were doing terrible. They were in the toilet. They were done. It was also because the person... I don't remember his name... But the person who came in when Time Warner and AOL made their merger, which has recently been a couple years ago, nullified because it was one of the worst deals in wrestling history, in merger history. It was one of the worst deals ever. But there's no word yet of how Riley's dismissal might impact AEW, if at all. AEW has been set to introduce a third-hour programming to Warner Media, but that has not happened yet. The shakeup at Warner Media has seen as a major story. The news is that Gigantic can express how big Riley was for one who greenlit AEW. AEW really was a guy who was a large part of what is in AEW. Dave Meltzer wrote the Wrestling Observer. AEW CEO President Tony Khan has stated at the media interviews that possibility of bringing pro wrestling back to Turner Broadcasting for the first time since the end of WCW in 2001 began with he and Riley meeting at a party in Los Angeles when Khan pitched the idea. Riley was open to the idea within 18 months, AEW was born. Also, Riley was the one to renew the AEW contract after a few months. So a lot of AEW that we see on television is thanks to Riley. Now, whoever comes in to oversee this new branch could be like, this AEW, it's getting so-so ratings. It's doing okay, but it wasn't because of me. It wasn't because of me. I had nothing to do with it. I think we're going to axe this. So, AEW, and Cody did come out and say that, there's nothing to worry about, that you can't say that. The new person who comes in charge of whoever oversees this branch that they're coming out with now, it could just be like, you know what? AEW is not for us anymore. WCW, as I mentioned earlier, WCW was supposed to be sold to Eric Bischoff and his group with the TV and everything. They were going to have it was going to be WCW wasn't going to be owned by Turner anymore. It was going to be owned by Eric Bischoff, but they were going to get the TV time. When that didn't happen, WCW became worthless. You need the TV deal. Which was huge that AEW was able to get that TV deal. Because if AEW did not have a TV deal, AEW would not be AEW right now. AEW would have went belly up in no time. So for them to even get that TV deal, that's great for them. Now, what is it going to do in the end for AEW. We don't know. For all we know, AEW could be moved to Saturdays. AEW could be moved to Sunday, and they have no choice. That is the thing that people are going to realize, that AEW had their one guy removed. And it's great. It's a good thing that they were actually able to get that TV deal, because if they didn't get that TV deal, that new one, then AEW would probably be on that 2-year deal, and if things didn't get to where this new person thinks that they need to go, AEW would probably not exist. It's like AEW, like anybody who is an AEW fan should be thanking their lucky stars that AEW was able to get that TV deal, because without that TV deal, we don't have an AEW anymore. And in no time flat. Don't believe me? Go watch WCW and see, or go back and read everything about WCW. Yes, they were in the toilet. Yes, they weren't going to go very far on how they were going. Eric Bischoff could have went in and bought WCW, was going to buy WCW, and then all of a sudden, the guy, like AOL Time Warner merger came, and the guy who came in did not want wrestling on TNT anymore. He did not want wrestling on the Turner Broadcasting Networks anymore. So, boom, done. It was over with, and that was the end of it. WWE came in, bought WCW for pennies on the dollar, and that is why you don't see WWE. That's why you don't see WCW anymore, and why we're up to where we are with AEW. Who didn't see this coming? The NXT creative team update, as people in WWE were fully unhappy over losing the rating battle to AEW. There is said to be an unhappiness within WWE's company over NXT losing weekly ratings battle to AEW. It is reported by Wrestling Observer newsletter that while nobody will publicly say it, there are a lot of people who are not happy with the brand losing most weeks. It looks like there may be a focus on improving the NXT product, as there has been recent changes made to the creative team. It was reporting last Friday via PW Insider that WWE recently hired 2 or 3 writers to work on the NXT creative team. The Observer reported an update this week and noted that NXT has always had its own writers, but they were main roster writers who were always also helping write NXT. Since the brand moved to the USA Network back in September, NXT has been given 3 exclusive writers, and now they have 5. 3 writers are moved from the main writing team to NXT last fall, and now there are 2 new hires. The Observer added that one of the 2 new NXT writers is a former writer who was brought back to the company, while the other one was someone who worked the main roster. Only writing team is now only working NXT. The biggest problem that NXT is suffering from now is that they are hot-shotting way too much. They're not building storylines anymore. NXT at 1 hour and taping 4 or 5 episodes in a row. You couldn't really change much in that time, having 4 or 5 episodes in a row rating. You already had your stories, and that gave you 4 or 5 weeks to build storylines and how you wanted things to go, work things out. Doing it week to week to week is so much harder than going, well, here's the 5 weeks we have. We have 5 weeks right here. Let's go here and give you another, and we're going to do that. We have our 5 weeks done. We taped our 5 weeks. Now we have 5 more weeks to worry about how we want this story to go. So we have a lot extra time to process what we're going to do. Like, just look at Fyter Fest and the Great American Bash. Fyter Fest had been promoted for weeks. For weeks. The Great American Bash was not a decision, or wasn't even promoted as the Great American Bash until the week prior. And then, in the second episode of the Great American Bash, WWE decided, or NXT decided, we're going to take our 2 singles champions for the men, and we're going to make them we're going to give them a dual champion. And when that dual champion is done becoming a dual champion, 2 weeks later, they're going to relinquish the North American Championships, which then tells me that Adam Cole, if he would have won that match, would have been a North American champion for 2 weeks. It was not planned. It was never going to be that way. Keith Lee probably wouldn't have won the NXT Championship if it wasn't for the fact that they wanted to hotshot it. And yes, AEW did not win those 2 weeks because NXT and the USA Network said, you know what, we're tired of losing, so what we're going to do, we're going to bring in Sasha Banks, we're going to bring in Bayley, we're going to bring in Asuka, we're going to have a double champion match, a champion versus champion, winner-take-all match. We're going to take our main events and do commercial-free. What people do a lot of times for AEW and NXT is they flip back and forth. Commercial, flip to NXT. Commercial, flip to AEW. Back and forth. But when you have a main event and it's commercial free, people don't have time unless the main event is absolutely boring. But come on, it was Io Shirai versus Sasha Banks and then Keith Lee versus Adam Cole for the championships. Who's going to want to change the channel on those two matches? Nobody. So when AEW had that commercial break going into that last match, people were like, let's flip over there. Let's see what's going on there. Oh, this is a hell of a match. Waiting for that time for that commercial to come, and it never comes. So, and then what happened? The very next week, and every week since, AEW has taken the lead, and AEW has held that lead. So, where did things go wrong for NXT? They tried and tried and tried to hotshot and push things so that AEW would be looking like losers. And you can't just continue to hotshot like that. And USA Network knows that they can't do commercial-free main events every single week. I mean, if they did a commercial-free main event every single week and you gave them a hot main event, then WWE and NXT would probably win almost every single week because people do switch back and forth. They do. And when that commercial break comes for the main event on AEW, and that commercial doesn't come for NXT, people are gonna flip to NXT, watch whatever's left in the main event. If it's a good main event, which it usually is, boom, they win every single time. It's just how it is. Now, AEW is going to win most of the time. The heart and soul of NXT left. It started to get drained away in September when they moved to USA Network. Those first 2 episodes were fine. The first episode of NXT on the USA Network, I watched it live because there was no other wrestling on at the time. It felt like, and honestly, it's because this is probably what they were going to do over the next 4 weeks. It felt like the first 2 episodes of NXT, which were in September, they felt like 4 episodes of 1-hour NXT shoved together and made into 2-hour episodes because they had already had 4 weeks ready to go before Vince McMahon went, you know what? We're going to get a deal for NXT and put them on the USA Network. So instead of scrapping anything, what did they do? They went out there and they gave you the 2 best shows they could give you. And then from then on, they tried to counter-program AEW as often as possible. And now people are sitting there and saying because AEW is going to be forced to have the first episode of AEW show preempted to Saturday, August 22nd, because they're supposed to be on the 19th, and the NBA playoffs are going on, so they're going to be on August 22nd, that they're counter-programming NXT TakeOver 30. Are you kidding me? It's not their choice. Counter-programming is when you decide that you're going to go up against somebody, like against your competition with something at equal or better value in your opinion. AEW is not looking to do that. AEW got dealt that hand because of the NBA restart, and now they have to be off of TV on Wednesday for that week, and it's going to be on Saturday. Is it their choice? No. But before we get out of here, we're going to talk about one more thing. Monday Night Raw ratings are in. And the Raw Underground shows that it is not going to be a ratings draw. This week's Raw drew a 1.7 something, and it was up from 1.617 from the week before. The first hour drew 1.710, which is up from last week's 1.699. The second hour drew 1.824, which is way up, but here's the kicker. It was 1.688 last week. This week, the final hour drew 1.610. And of course, that's still up from the week before. They were up all around. But if 1.463, if it goes from 1.824 to 1.624, that tells you one thing. People were not sticking around to see what Underground was doing. Nobody's going to care about Underground. Now again, this is a 1-week rating. And WWE does this every time. Bring the McMahons back, they are ratings. Yes, this week they were Shane McMahon, I guess, was a slight bump in ratings. But what are they going to do next week? When Underground, again, fails to keep people around. You had almost getting close to 2 million viewers in that second hour. What drove people away? If your third hour goes from 1.8 to 1.610, what is driving people away? Is it Underground? Is it the main events? It's that third hour is just dropping off. Maybe because nobody wants to sit there and watch professional wrestling outside of a pay-per-view for 3 hours. You know what made watching pay-per-views for 3 hours and only pay-per-views for 3 hours, while Raw, SmackDown were 2 hours? It made them feel special because they were the only time that you saw wrestling for 3 hours in a month. Now you're seeing Monday Night Raw every single week for 3 hours, and the pay-per-views have gone up until this pandemic. It's just WWE needs to learn that this shit's just not going to work. Retribution is going to be a failure. It all looked like shit on Friday. Now you have this Underground stuff, which is also going to be a massive failure. WWE is at the point of desperation. They're in WCW territory. WWE is WCW territory right now. They're throwing things at the wall. They have all these ideas up. They're throwing darts, trying to get something to stick, and nothing is sticking. But what else can I say? That's just WWE. They're never going to learn. But that is going to be your Unscripted episode number 131. I'm getting out of here. You guys have a good one. Hit that subscribe button. Comment down below. Like or dislike this video. Find me on Twitter at The France Club. Find me on twitch.tv/The France Club. Find me on Instagram at The France Club. And I will see you guys tomorrow for what should be another shitty episode of Monday Night Raw. Until then, my name is The France, and I'll see you guys later.